There is a question worth thinking about. Why do almost all valuable things in life take so long to build? A meaningful career, real wealth, a healthy body, a lasting relationship, a mature mind. They all require years. Yet our minds are increasingly being trained to expect the opposite. Instant pleasure, instant results, instant stimulation. And that is where the problem begins. Because when people lose the ability to wait, they also begin to lose the ability to build. Short-form dopamine doesn't just change how we spend our free time. It changes our relationship with time itself. And when that relationship changes, the direction of a life can change with it. Most people assume that their future will be shaped by the big decisions they make. Which career to pursue, who to marry, where to live, what business to start. But life rarely changes because of a single decision. More often, it changes because of the small patterns that repeat every day without being noticed. A few minutes of distraction, a quick scroll during a break, a habit of reaching for stimulation whenever boredom appears. None of these seem important on their own. In fact, they feel completely harmless. That is why they are so difficult to question. The modern world has made instant gratification incredibly accessible. Entertainment, novelty, information, and stimulation are always within reach. Whenever there is a moment of silence, something is ready to fill it. Whenever there is discomfort, something is ready to distract from it. At first, this feels like convenience. But over time, a deeper question begins to emerge. What happens when a mind becomes accustomed to receiving rewards immediately, while the most valuable things in life still demand patience? That tension may be shaping far more of our lives than we realize. Most discussions about dopamine focus on distraction. They tell us that short-term stimulation makes it harder to concentrate. And while that is true, it is not the real danger. Distraction is only the symptom. The deeper problem is that dopamine gradually changes what the mind expects from life. It teaches us to seek rewards quickly, to abandon things that feel slow, to move on whenever progress is not immediately visible. And that becomes a problem, because almost everything valuable grows in the opposite way. Knowledge grows slowly. Skills grow slowly. Trust grows slowly. Wealth grows slowly. The most meaningful achievements in life are not created through intensity. They are created through accumulation. Day after day. Year after year. The real cost of short-term dopamine is not that it steals a few minutes of your attention. It is that it quietly weakens your ability to stay with something long enough for compounding to take effect. And once that ability begins to disappear, the consequences reach far beyond productivity. They begin to shape the trajectory of an entire life. This is Mind Over System, where we explore the hidden mechanisms shaping modern life. Most people believe dopamine is stealing their time, but time was never the real target. After all, everyone wastes time. A few minutes here, an hour there, an evening lost to endless scrolling. Those losses are visible. They are easy to measure. What is much harder to see is what disappears alongside them. Because the greatest cost of dopamine is not the time you spend chasing stimulation. It is the ability you lose in the process. The ability to remain, to stay with something after the excitement fades, to continue when progress becomes invisible, to endure the long, uneventful stretch between effort and reward. Every meaningful pursuit begins with enthusiasm. the first day of learning a skill, the first week of building a business, the first month of pursuing a goal. In the beginning, motivation feels effortless. The future feels close. The rewards feel real. But eventually, every journey enters a different phase. The phase where nothing seems to happen. The phase where improvement becomes difficult to notice. The phase where the work remains, but the excitement is gone. And this is where lives quietly begin to diverge. Not because some people are more intelligent, not because some people are more talented, but because some are able to remain when there is no immediate reward for doing so. A tree spends years growing before it offers shade. A reputation takes years before it opens doors. A craft demands years before it resembles mastery. Reality has always worked this way. The most valuable things in life arrive slowly. Yet dopamine teaches the opposite lesson. It teaches the mind to expect immediate feedback, immediate stimulation, immediate gratification. And over time, a person begins to carry those expectations into every area of life. The problem is that reality refuses to cooperate. Life still moves at the pace of growth, and growth has never been in a hurry. Perhaps this is why so many people feel stuck today. Not because they lack ambition, not because they lack potential, but because they have unknowingly lost the ability to stay long enough for the invisible stages of growth to become visible. And in the end, success rarely belongs to the person who starts. More often, it belongs to the person who remains. At first glance, the ability to stay may not seem particularly important. In a world obsessed with talent, intelligence, and opportunity, persistence often sounds ordinary, almost boring. Yet if you look closely at how anything valuable is created, a different pattern begins to emerge. A meaningful life is rarely built through dramatic breakthroughs. It is built through accumulation. A book is written one page at a time. A business grows one customer at a time. A fortune is built one decision at a time. Even wisdom itself accumulates slowly through years of observation, mistakes, and reflection. The problem is that accumulation is invisible while it is happening. For a long time, it looks like nothing is changing. The effort feels disconnected from the reward. The work appears larger than the progress. And because the human mind naturally seeks evidence, many people leave before the evidence arrives. They abandon the skill before competence appears. They abandon the investment before compounding appears. They abandon the project before momentum appears. From the outside, it looks like a lack of discipline, but often it is something deeper. They have become accustomed to a world where value arrives instantly, a world where entertainment requires no patience, where stimulation requires no effort, where rewards appear the moment desire appears. Accumulation works according to a completely different logic. It asks for effort before evidence, patience before progress, faith before results. And that is precisely why it creates such extraordinary outcomes. Because most people never stay long enough to experience its power. Think about two individuals starting from the same place, the same education, the same resources, the same ambitions. One spends years moving from interest to interest, constantly chasing what feels exciting in the moment. The other commits to a direction and remains there long after the excitement has disappeared. At first, the difference between them is almost impossible to notice. After a year, they look similar. After 3 years, the gap becomes visible. After 10 years, They appear to have lived entirely different lives. What separates them is not usually a single decision. It is the accumulated effect of thousands of small decisions repeated over time. This is what dopamine quietly interferes with. Not your intelligence, not your potential, but your relationship with accumulation itself. And when a person loses the ability to accumulate, they begin losing access to the very process through which wealth, mastery, influence, and meaning are created. Beneath distraction, beneath persistence, beneath accumulation, there is an even deeper question. What kind of relationship do you have with time? Most people never ask themselves this, yet it may be one of the most important questions in life, because every human being lives under the same laws of time. No one can create more of it. No one can escape it. The only difference is how people relate to it. Some people see time as something to consume. Others see it as something to invest. At first, the distinction appears small, but over the course of a lifetime, it creates entirely different realities. A person who consumes time is constantly searching for the next reward, the next distraction, the next burst of stimulation, the next thing that makes the present moment feel easier, faster, or more entertaining. A person who invests time accepts a very different bargain. They are willing to endure uncertainty today in exchange for something greater tomorrow. They understand that value often exists on the other side of waiting, on the other side of repetition, on the other side of effort that appears unrewarded. And this is where dopamine begins to reveal its deepest influence. Because dopamine does not simply change what you pay attention to. It changes what feels worth waiting for. Over time, the mind becomes increasingly uncomfortable with delayed rewards. The future starts to feel less tangible, less meaningful, less real than whatever pleasure is available right now. And when that happens, a person slowly loses the ability to play long-term games. The tragedy is that nearly every meaningful achievement in life is a long-term game. Building wealth is a long-term game. Building expertise is a long-term game. Building trust is a long-term game. Building a family is a long-term game. Even building yourself is a long-term game. None of these rewards arrive quickly. They emerge gradually, often hidden beneath years of effort that seem insignificant in the moment. But when someone becomes conditioned to expect immediate returns, those long-term games begin to feel unbearable. Not impossible, just unbearably slow. And so, they leave. They move to something easier, something faster, something more stimulating, never realizing that the greatest opportunities in life are often invisible during their early stages. This may be the quiet cost of modern dopamine. Not that it makes people lazy, not that it destroys ambition, but that it slowly convinces them to trade what is meaningful for what is immediate. And over time, that trade becomes a destiny. Because the future belongs to those who can remain committed to things that have not yet rewarded them. While everyone else keeps searching for rewards that arrive today, you can see this pattern almost everywhere once you start looking for it. Consider the people who become exceptional in their fields. Great investors rarely become successful after a few months. Great writers are not created by a burst of inspiration. Great entrepreneurs rarely build meaningful companies overnight. What often separates them from everyone else is surprisingly simple. They stay. While others become distracted, they continue. While others become discouraged, they continue. While others move on to the next exciting opportunity, they continue. From the outside, It is tempting to call this talent. But talent alone cannot explain why so many highly intelligent people fail to reach their potential. Nor can it explain why seemingly ordinary individuals sometimes achieve extraordinary results. The difference is often hidden in plain sight. One group keeps resetting the clock. The other keeps accumulating. Years later, the outcomes look dramatic. But the process was almost invisible while it was happening. The future rarely changes in a single moment. More often, it changes through small actions repeated long enough to become impossible to ignore. Think about the last time you tried to learn something difficult. Perhaps it was a language, a professional skill, a business, a creative craft. The first few days felt exciting. Every hour seemed productive. Every small improvement felt rewarding. Then, inevitably, something changed. The progress slowed down. The mistakes became more visible. The effort remained the same, but the sense of reward began to disappear. And suddenly, things that once felt important started to feel optional. A short break seemed harmless. A few minutes of entertainment felt deserved. A quick distraction felt insignificant. Yet what often follows is surprisingly familiar. The break becomes longer. The distance from the work grows wider. And eventually, the project that once felt full of potential quietly fades into the background of life. Not because the goal was impossible, not because the person lacked ability, but because the reward arrived too slowly. This is the part of growth that people rarely talk about. The greatest challenge is often not hard work. It is surviving the period when effort and reward become disconnected. The period when nothing seems to happen. The period when progress exists but remains invisible. And perhaps that is why so many people underestimate the power of dopamine, because its influence is rarely dramatic. It does not force you to abandon your future. It simply makes the future feel less compelling than whatever is available right now. This is why dopamine is not really a problem of attention. It is a problem of time. More specifically, it is a problem of what feels worth waiting for. Because every meaningful achievement in life asks the same thing from us: to endure a period where effort comes first and reward comes later. But dopamine trains the mind in the opposite direction. Reward first, effort later. And the longer a person lives by that logic, the harder it becomes to commit to anything that grows slowly. Wealth grows slowly. Expertise grows slowly. Trust grows slowly. Character grows slowly. Life itself grows slowly. Perhaps that is the real danger. Not that dopamine makes people distracted, but that it makes them increasingly impatient with the pace at which reality creates value. Perhaps the strangest consequence of dopamine is not what it does to our attention. It is what it does to our perception, because reality has always moved slowly. A tree grows slowly. Trust grows slowly. Mastery grows slowly. A meaningful life grows slowly. Nothing about reality has changed. What has changed is our tolerance for its pace. For the first time in history, many people are experiencing a world where stimulation arrives faster than growth. And after enough exposure, growth itself begins to feel unnatural, too slow, too quiet, too distant. Yet reality has never agreed to move faster, which means the conflict is not between us and dopamine. It is between our expectations and the way life actually works. The solution, then, is not to fear dopamine. Dopamine is not the enemy. It is simply a tool that can either serve your future or consume it. What matters is whether you allow immediate rewards to become the standard by which all rewards are judged. Because the most valuable things in life will never compete with instant gratification. They do not arrive in seconds. They do not arrive on demand. They arrive slowly, and they always have. Perhaps maturity is nothing more than learning to trust that process again. The question was never whether dopamine is good or bad. The real question is far simpler. In a world where everything competes for your attention, what are you still willing to wait for? Because the answer may reveal far more about your future than you think.